Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another guide. Today's guide is going to be on the index, but before we get into the guide, I would like to give a humble thanks to everyone who's been making these streams and YouTube videos what they are. Without the amazing community that we've grown, these videos and our Twitch streams would not be as much of a success as they are. So big thank you to everyone who's been tuning in and watching these videos. If you're interested in joining us and being part of the creation of these videos, as well as getting your opinion in and also helping how we structure everything we do here, feel free to join us on Twitch. There'll be a link in the description of the video down below. And if you feel like taking that one step further, you can also follow my social media, which will also be linked down below. We generally stream every single day, but with some Warframe. And we'd love to see you there with us sometime. And if you follow my Twitters, it'll notify you of giveaways when we go live, all that kind of good stuff as well. The index, in short, is a very easy way of earning credits. This mission will specifically allow you to grind credits in a very quick manner. There are other ways of earning credits, but this is one of the best. The index is a mission located on Neptune, and this is something that also has a quest linked to it as well. The Glassed Gambit is the quest you get for getting Nidus, and the process of going through that quest is essentially a tutorial for the index. Now, the index as a whole, once you select the mission, has an investment requirement. Now, to simplify this, the different investments you see, low risk, medium risk, and high risk, it might be pretty straightforward to understand, but in short, when you start with low risk, you have a low investment cost. You invest a certain amount of credits, and then if you complete the challenge of that index run, then you get your investment back, and you get some profit on top. The higher the risk, the more challenge, but the more of a return you'll get. If you fail, you lose your investment, so you have to actually make sure you win. As with anything in life, why would you want to do something if you didn't get something in return? Before we actually get in and take a look at the index in a first-person perspective, let's just go through what you're going to expect to find within the index. We'll have some footage up here showing you some examples of gameplay that you'll see within there, and we'll go through everything you're going to encounter when you actually get in there yourself. So, the first thing to understand are the mechanics of the index. To start with, you have index points. Index points are essentially these green little slithers of metal that glow green. They drop from any enemy killed within the index. These green shards you will need to pick up anytime you see them. There's going to be a bit more about this later, but you need them in order to win. You can carry as many index points as you want, and then you need to deposit them at the objective marker within the mission itself, which is considered the goal, or the goalie, or the score location. And many names for it. You need to take your points to that location in order to earn wager points. Wager points are the requisite to complete the index mission you're in. Every point deposited will add 10 seconds to the overall timer of the mission, prolonging the match duration. When an enemy scores, that timer will go down by 10 seconds per point as well. So there's a big hint on wanting to prevent your enemy from scoring at the same time as well. So you remember when I said you could hold infinite points? The more points you hold, the greater the payoff when depositing. But that's not always a good thing, because the more points you hold, the bigger a debuff will become called financial stress. Now, this may just sound like a university student who's just finished their university course and realised how much debt they're in, but actually this is a very aggravating debuff that hinders you from depositing points as you go through the index run. For every point you hold, you will gain a stack of financial stress. Every stack of financial stress you have will reduce a percentage of your overall health, give you a progressive slow, as well as sapping your energy. Now, the only way you're able to get rid of this debuff is by then scoring those points. Bearing in mind that for every 5 points you hold on to and then deposit, you then get a bonus as well. This actually caps at 20 points, so there's physically no reason to actually cap more than 20 points at a given time. If the wager target is met and you complete the objective of your level of difficulty, then you will get the end wave screen appear, allowing you to either leave or stay. If you stay, the amount of time you've obtained and the level of the enemy and the points you've earned will carry over, and then you can continue on for another goal of credits. If you fail the mission, however, i.e. if the enemy scores enough to reduce the time to 0, and they have scored more points than you, then you get nothing and you forfeit any previous reward you've had up until that point. Some other things to keep in mind is that you are unable to use your gear wheel, which means you can't use energy regeneration pads, any health pads, and you can't use specters either, so you're essentially on your own merits with this. Some other things to keep in mind as well is the enemy will level up as time goes by. The longer you stay, the higher the level of the enemy will become, and thus you'll need to put in more effort to get the points off of the enemy. Now we're going to talk about the enemy you're going to fight. I'm only going to talk about the notable abilities and the trends in the appearance of the enemy, as if we go into every finite detail, we'll be here for a century. The enemy have 4 different categories. There's the Reclamation Unit, there's the Trading Group, the Claims Investigation Unit, and the Investory Relations Unit. That is a lot of words to say in one mouthful. And each of these categories have different enemies that fall into them. So we're going to take a look at each of them and see what you are going to be fighting. The Trading Group has the Auditor, which is a Burster with a frontal shield that is very defensive and can use a shockwave to knock you down. The Azoth is a Jackal unit that drops bombs and is very agile. There's nothing really to worry about this, as it's also very low on defense. Jad Turan is probably one of the most annoying of the enemies you will fight. If you see this guy, you want to prioritize him, as this guy is holding a Lecter. He is a humanoid enemy, and this guy has a nullification ability that will cause all of your buffs to disappear. He also has the ability to sap, slow, and be very obnoxious with those abilities as well. So prioritize him if you see him. If this is one of the ones that will scupper any of your attempts if you're going for long-winded runs. And there is also the Raptor RX within this group as well, which is a very big Osprey. The main notable thing about this is that it has a absolute metric crud load of armor. Now, recommendation for this is if you can take armor stripping, it will make your life a lot easier. If for long-winded runs, the armor scales very, very heavily. By the time you get to an hour's worth of a run, that armor is going to be very hard to burst through. Next, we have the Reclamation Unit. The first enemy you'll fight in this is Lockjaw and Soul, which is a Zanuka clone that has a Helios companion following along with it. The only notable thing about this is it basically attacks in the same manner that Zanuka does, with fast-moving attacks and also a lot of knockdowns. Nako Zol is a big corpus dude with very funky-looking shoulder pads. This guy has an Arctic aura as well as a repulsion ability. Pelna Cade is a dude with an eye patch and a Lecter he's holding. This guy can use slow orbs and gets stronger this slow orb gets stronger with its pull the further you move away from it. So you want to avoid the big floaty Vorban-looking orbs whenever you can. Ved Zol, I swear some of these names are the most obnoxious thing on the planet, holds an Opticore which can cause a stagger. He also is able to use a ground strand that deals electric damage and summons little Neem drones. These can actually also drop index points on their own, so this actually can greatly influence the amount of points you're able to pick up if you see them. The next group of enemies are the Claims Investigation Group. First of all, you have the Darren Zahn. This is a white outfit-wearing individual who holds a Sonicore. He can activate any of the turrets on the map whenever he's near a control point. And he also deploys translocators, which, if the name says anything, it just says that they're teleporters, allowing enemies to teleport from one point to another. Jen Dro is a female white outfit-wearing individual with dual cestras in her hands. She has the ability of copying the appearance of any of your team. However, it is very evident to notice this because their nameplates will still show up in an enemy-like fashion. And she is also then able to use a translocator as well. The M-Wham is a red-looking mower who has the ability of using a shockwave ability, summoning proximity mines, which are very, very deadly, so don't stand in them, and also has a guardian. Tia Main is a female humanoid who looks a bit like Geordie LaForge from Star Trek, who can also use translocators and also has the ability of being invisible and can also summon slow orbs. Don't stand near them. The final group of enemies are the Investory Relations. Most of these are just clones of each other. However, you have Armis Alter, who wields a Glaxion, who has a Power Slam ability, which deals electric damage, can deploy pneumo traps, which explode if you go near them. Don't stand in them. And then you have Drew Pesfer and Rena Dal, who are identical in abilities, however different in name and appearance. However, they all do the same thing. These are the ones that will have the battery packs on their back. If you see them, they all have the same abilities. The only other enemy in the Investory Relations team is the 002ER Osprey. This dude is a typical Osprey that can boost shields and deals lots of damage with its dual optical linked cannons, and also has a metric crud ton of armor that you'll want to strip if you get the opportunity to. All of the enemies you're going to fight will suffer from the traditional weaknesses that they would have for the type of enemy they are. Considering most of these enemies are corpus with shields, gas damage and magnetic damage is going to do incredibly well here. However, my recommendation is either to go with a combination of viral, gas, radiation, or magnetic, and then add /on. The weapons you use should always try and prioritize higher base damage so you can take advantage of the scaling of the levels that will come with them, and then hopefully be able to one-shot them through that. Weapons are often the dictator as to how quick and efficient these runs will go. However, we'll cover that more later. So, as is very evident, the rewards of this are credits. Now, the credits you get do actually stack with credit boosters. So if you come into this with a credit booster, not only will you get your initial reward, but you can then double that with the credit booster as well. Something that's worthwhile mentioning as well is that these enemies do also drop golden mods, most of which are a bit gimmicky and none of them really make much of a difference with builds that you would normally go for, but they are golden mods that can be sold for a fair chunk of endo as well as credits, and then maybe even used for transmogrifying as well. There are two maps that you will have within the index. You have the open map, which is set in the side of the hilltop here, and then you have the other one, which is based inside of the index room itself, both of which function in exactly the same way. They both have different avenues, different laning methods, but the thing to keep in mind, you are only able to obtain energy from the depositing nodes within the mission itself. There are health nodes as well as energy nodes, health nodes as well as energy nodes, and then you also have ammo capacity chunks laying around as well. If you come in here with less than a full group, then your teammates will be subsidized with specters instead. My recommendation when you go into these missions initially, always keep an eye on the map, learn the map, know where enemies can hide, generally where they can spawn from, and learn the best way of getting around from each goal to the other. As you can see, the enemy will generally take their points and score them in the quickest manner possible. If an enemy does pick up their points, they will instantly beeline to their goal to score them. Now we're going to look at setup and frames. There are definitely some frames that I could recommend, and they sort of fall into a couple of different categories. The first category that's recommended is DPS. DPS frames are frames that are able to pump out loads of damage and able to give your other people the ability of getting points to pick up for the rest of the game. My best frame recommendation for this is either Mesa, due to the Peace Walker and how powerful it can be, as well as having the auto-aim function, as well as being able to give buffs to your ally, and Ash as well, and I'll explain more about Ash in a bit. Mesa's Peace Walker has the ability of pumping out huge amounts of damage with an auto-aim, and even at the higher level, this can scale incredibly well as well. Because Mesa also has the ability of having some defensive-based abilities as well, it allows her to also pick up points very effectively. The way you mod these frames, especially with Mesa, will depend on the type of run you're going for. If you're just going for a simple one turn, you're going to also be focusing on the pure damage. If you tend on going for slightly longer, you might want to focus a bit more on survivability. The general modding for my Mesa and the way I do most of my runs with her is focusing on viral damage as well as then pure raw damage. This is the general build I use with the regulators, and the build you go for with Mesa herself is purely based on a bit of power strength with some efficiency as well. Ash is another very good choice for this. The main reason being is due to an augment called Fatal Teleport and how it combines with Covert Lethality. When you get to very high levels within the index, enemies are going to be reaching level 255 very easily, and at that point, most weapons are going to be inoperable. However, there are certain frames, for example like Ash, that come under the DPS category that do not have to worry about the level of the enemy, as the combination of abilities mixed with augments allow them to almost one-shot most enemies you come up against. The augment you're looking for is the Fatal Teleport, and if you'd like, you can also put Seeking Shuriken. Seeking Shuriken will help strip the armor of the big ospreys that have all that armor on them. But what you're looking for is Fatal Teleport mixed with a dagger having Covert Lethality. Covert Lethality mixed with Fatal Teleport allows you to pretty much one-shot any enemy regardless of level. The way you play Ash is very simple. You're going to be very dippy, ducky, dodgy, and divey, and your aim is to always keep your energy up as much as possible. Learning the locations of the energy orbs is going to be very vital. As an Ash, without your invisibility on, you're very squishy most of the time. So your objective is to keep your invisibility on as much as possible, and Fatal Teleport the ever-loving crap out of everything else in the map. Fatal Teleport allows you to teleport all over the place, as well as then instantly execute any target. As I said previously, the way Fatal Teleport and Dark Covert Lethality integrate with each other, the mathematics is a little bit complicated, but in essence, so long as you have Covert Lethality and Fatal Teleport, you one-shot any target. It is that simple. So as you can see, you jump around, so long as you have invisibility on, the enemy will never target you. You run around executing, and as you get later into the waves, you are going to be the one being relied on to be the one killing everything. Bearing in mind that there is a slight limitation with this, as you cannot do this to flying targets and any enemy that does not have their feet on the ground. This also does not work on most of the bursars. However, it does work on the mowers. No index guide would be complete without a mention of Rhino. He also falls into the category of the second type of frame that you would want to bring, which are the carriers, which, as the name suggests, are basically the people who will carry the index points or make the priority to carry the index points. There is no must-use frame to carry index points, as anyone can do it, but there are certain frames that are most certainly better. Rhino is hands down one of the best because he has Iron Skin. Iron Skin allows him to create a barrier between his health and taking damage, meaning he need not worry about the financial stress debuff nearly as much as other frames. Obviously, he still gets affected by the slow and energy drain, but so long as you have Iron Skin up, you'll never need to worry about dying as much as other frames would. Rhino, with the build you would want to use, would focus on power strength and armor to get the strongest Iron Skin possible, and to also give your team a very powerful buff with your 3. The build that I'm currently using, I would suggest to have a little bit more range on if you want to support your team more with a buff, but this works tremendously well in the grand scheme of things and will help you carry points up until the end game. Rhino comes in a very simple fashion. All you have to do is make sure you keep your Iron Skin up. You get energy, and as you get energy, you activate your Iron Skin, and something you'll want to do is make sure that you have a decent weapon that has high base damage so you can scale it well with your 3. Let it be known that damage buffs that work well with high base damage weapons will make your weapons infinitely stronger. Rhino's execution is very straightforward. As long as you have your Iron Skin up, you will make a priority of picking up any index points that drop so that your team can go about doing what they need to do. As you can see, as I'm getting my financial stress, I'm slowing down, but I'm not having to worry so long as I have a buffer of my Iron Skin. And in terms of how you play it within the index, you want to just make sure you focus on the index points without doing too much else. With most frames that you bring here, they'll start off DPSing, and as the waves go on, you'll then fall back onto the utility of your frame. Whereas Rhino, throughout the entirety of an index run, will always be focusing on just picking up points and, if possible, killing things as they go. So let's talk about weapons very quickly. There are certain weapons which I could definitely recommend you bringing here. So long as you're taking into consideration the element type you're bringing, as mentioned earlier, then the weapon can basically be anything. The only time where optimization actually makes a big difference is if you plan on doing high risk. For low risk, medium risk, and even for most high risk as well, you'll never really need to worry about too much about your setup unless you plan on doing multiple waves, or you plan on doing a John Prodman run, which we'll explain more about later. If you do plan on being optimal, the things you to min-max are the weapons with things like Rubico, Lanka, Tigris, anything that has a very high base damage that deals large chunky amounts of damage in a very short space of time. Although you can bring low base damage weapons like Soma and all that sort of jazz, they won't scale tremendously well in the later stages. Specifically because of the enemy's level going up higher, their resistance will also scale with that, causing mitigation on damage to become higher as well. Now, when it comes to actually optimizing your team, there are certain frames that you could definitely bring to make life easier for yourself, but the setup of your team is entirely down to how you want to play. There is no definitive correct or incorrect frame to bring. However, if you want to be optimal, things such as Slover could definitely be useful. Slowing down the enemy whilst also doubling the damage they can potentially take is extremely useful. Having a goalie frame is also something that could be very useful as well. My recommendation for a goalie frame would be something along the lines of Vauban, Limbo, Cora, or even Gara. And especially if you're doing a John Prodman run where you'll be in here for an hour, then setup becomes more and more vital for those runs. But again, there's no correct answer. You can come in here with any setup, any frame, and get through an entire wave and farm credits very efficiently with no issue. It is entirely your prerogative as to how effective and how optimal you want to come in here with. The more optimal you are, the more efficient your runs will become, and the quicker you'll get them done. Now, you may have heard me mention this a couple of times already, but John Prodman, the meme, the legend, Nathaniel's #1 employee, this dude is an interesting one. There's an extra Easter egg within the index. If you stay in the index and continue to progress your mission on through multiple waves, after 1 hour of being in the index, the mighty John Prodman will appear in all his fame and glory. John Prodman, simply put, is a run where you have to super mega optimize your team to get to that point. John Prodman, once killed, will then drop one of these delightful posters. It is nothing more than a gimmick, but it is worth mentioning. That in itself is probably worth a guide in of itself. If you want to do a John Prodman one, you need to optimize yourself. Even on low risk, by the time you get to the 1 hour mark where John Prodman spawns, the enemy are going to be about level 250, and that will require a lot of effort. With Prodman runs, my recommendation is always to get as many points scored in the early game, and then ride it out through the late game. Bearing in mind that the spawn of the enemy can often dictate the speed in which you get points. If you get a bunch of the tankier enemies in the early stage, that's going to greatly hinder your ratio of earning index points, and then make it harder for you in the later game. This guide has been everything you need to know about index. Hopefully it's been helpful in some regard or another. Again, I've probably missed something here or there, but hey, we're learning. I'm getting better at these, at least I'd like to think I am. If you think I'm getting better, leave a comment down below and I'll try to... I'll thumb up the good ones and completely ignore the bad ones because I'm a typical YouTube content creator. Anyway, thank you for watching, guys. Enjoy the future videos, and I will hopefully see you all in our stream in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Ta-ra.